Welcome everyone to Weekend Escapades. Today we are at Old Cove Fort in Beaver, Utah. Now this is just off the I-15 on your way to Salt Lake, or if you're on your way from Salt Lake down to St. George, located right in the middle. We did not see this one coming. We backtracked because we were headed south, but we went back north just to share this location with you. Now be sure to like and subscribe to keep this channel strong. We enjoy making these videos and we hope you enjoy watching them just as much. Now there's quite a few buildings on the property. You can see the fort at the entrance in the background. What an amazing location. This is the Hinckley Home. Now I believe it was Ira Hinckley was the one that built this fort, was asked to build this fort in this location. And this was his original home that was located miles away, but they've moved it here and preserved it and restored it. Much of this is totally original, but they did have to dismantle and put it back together. And as things go, what a great restoration this is. Now this historic site is open to the public and you can take a tour at no charge. The tour guides are fantastic and they give you details about everything that is on property. Now, the Hinckley brothers built this location in 1867. The exterior of the fort is built out of volcanic rock, and you'll see off in the distance when you're in the fort, there's a kind of a mounded hill with a flat top, and that is where the volcanic rock came from. And the interior is made from limestone, and it's nice and smooth inside. That limestone made the walls nice and smooth. When you see these walls, just look at the details. On the outside from the volcanic rock, which is amazing how smooth it is, and the inside even smoother. So it was built to protect themselves and travelers from possible Native American raids. Now this was built from the Black Hawk Wars that we talked about earlier from the Pierce fort that we looked at in our last video. So the Black Hawk Wars from 1865 to 1868. And this fort was built to protect those travelers, stagecoach lines, and the Pony Express. Now, as much as this was a very fortified location, it actually operated almost like a bed and breakfast for all of the people that we had mentioned, the Pony Express, of course, stagecoaches and travelers. So the family that operated this had it as a self-sufficient fort, which included preparing regular meals and the rooms for guests. They were maintained as a small farm and a ranch, a blacksmith shop, and it was amazing when you look at this, the things that operated out of this building. And here's a view of the Telegraph Shop, and you can hear some of the telegraph in the background operating. There was no electricity here, so this telegraph operated off a wet cell, old school wet cell battery, the way they composed a couple of acids together to create electricity to be able to get those telegraphs out. This room here was the Salisbury stage and post office room that they occupied right next to the telegraph office. There is no shortage of detail in each one of these 12 rooms that exist in this fort. There's 6 on one side, 6 on another. The fort is 100 feet by 100 feet square. And when I found out those dimensions, I was a little shocked. It looks much larger than that when you're on the outside, and especially when you're in the inside, to see all of those rooms. And then, of course, the interior in the middle, it's all gravel, and they have it all raked, and there's a few trees inside there. So it just seems much bigger than what it is. Take a look at this crawl space. So this is one of the back rooms. This flooring comes up, and it's for storage, and also, of course, a great place to hide out if the fort was under attack, or if somebody was able to get inside the fort during an attack. I'm sure that they would hide inside this area until things cooled off. Now, during this fort's heyday, the Glimmer Salisbury stagecoach line stopped here at Fort Cove twice a day, and as many as 75 people would stay here and eat at the fort at a time. The fort served as an important regional communications hub, and the fort was also housed, of course, this telegraph office that just helped with the communications going through the Old West. These photos you've been seeing here, and of course, These images are the rooms where guests stayed and also some of the family stayed. And this is looking out the back door, the only door that goes out the back to the farm area, which we're going to see quickly here. And also, look at the wood, the way this was built. This is one of the walkways that's up by the gun slits at the top of the fort. And we're going to go up the stairs and take a look at the one that's at the front of the fort. It gives you a really good example of the positions that they were able to 360 degrees to protect this fort with gun slits all the way around the building. Now it appears that there are 5 gun slits on each wall at the top. And then there's also standing locations on the walls on the ground. So this was a very heavily fortified if need be. You can see here to kneel and see out. This is towards the front of the fort. But these gun slits were everywhere in these. And these forts had to be designed that way. Small on the exterior and large on the inside, so you could, of course, change direction if you were aiming to fire and protect that fort. Here's the old flagpole there with Old Glory flying high. And here's a close-up of those gun slits. Each one of these were between the chimneys that were there, and you would lay on the roof and be able to shoot out those gun slits. And then, of course, there were standing positions as well. You can tell by the view that this was the ideal spot for this fort for visibility. And look at the old base they still have for the flagpole there, original, and it still holds up the flagpole today. So we're going out back now. You can see there's a farm area and also this amazing blacksmith shop. And just take a look at the items inside, the giant bellow and the old hand drill. And all of these items are well preserved, and this whole blacksmith shop is in perfect condition and well put together. Many of the locations we visit have blacksmith shops, and I have to say it's one of my favorite things to look at. Is there's so many tools and so many things to see how they actually had to do the manual labor to get things done, and I think the blacksmith shop represents that best. This is the old ice house that's still here on property. Of course, it is an ice house, and they actually use it to store grain as well. You can see some of the things they have, the tools and the ice tongs hanging on the back wall. And this was the cowboy's cabin or rancher's cabin. You can see how well they've preserved this as well. They got some old breeches hanging over there on the bed, and of course some snowshoes. Just seeing how the old pioneers lived in this area, and of course a frying pan, cast iron. Not only could you cook in it, but you use it for protection. The last building we're going to look at here is a 3-story barn. It was extremely large. When we get up close to this and look inside and look at how many stalls and the area where they stored the hay, you just look at how massive this is on the inside, and a tremendous undertaking this must have been to put this barn up. As with most Old West location, there are plenty of buggies, and I always like to see them to know what the transportation looked like back in the Old West. So as we conclude, I always like to take a look around and find the oldest tree on the property, because that's the tree that saw everything that made the history of this location. And here it is. Thank you for joining us today at Old Cove Fort. We hope you enjoyed this location as much as we did. And until our next adventure, goodbye from Weekend Escapades.